Hello guys, Ezra here and welcome back to another Ezra review, and today we're going to be reviewing Superman, which is the first DCU movie written and directed by James Gunn and starring David Corenswet as our Superman Clark Kent and Rachel Brosnahan as Lois Lane and Nicholashoult as Lex Luthor and so many more, cast in this movie. Yeah, I gotta say, when I first watched the trailer for Superman, I thought it was like pretty exciting to see where the DCU is heading next, because I'm someone who are willing to give DC like a second chance, because I already have my MCU moment, for like the past 10 years, and I think it's time for like the DC universe to be thriving. And with James Gunn on the helm, I was like, okay, I'm pretty excited and I'm pretty open-minded to see where the movie will go. And the first movie, Superman, I think this movie is a solid start for the DCU. So let's start with the positive first before we get to the negative, because this movie is not perfect. There is some problems, but the positive aspect about the movie is actually the first of all the performance by David Corenswet. I think he's really good at playing Superman. And I mean Clark Kent was not in this movie a lot, and I was expecting to see like maybe David was able to play like two different characters, Superman and Clark Kent, kind of like Christopher Reeve, but that's not what happened here. For the most part, it's just Superman, and Clark Kent was barely, well, barely portrayed in the movie, and that part was like, okay. But at the same time, I do think David Corenswet does a good job to show his emotion. Obviously, when he was angry, you see that in the trailer where he was interviewed by Lois Lane, and I think seeing that scene for the full context is absolutely amazing, because I love the conflict that they set up in the movie. And speaking of Lois Lane, I think Rachel Brosnahan does a great job as well as Lois Lane, because I think these two has a really amazing chemistry, and I found them to be believable as a couple, and there is some conflict with their relationship, just a tiny bit of a conflict there, but I do like it, when the two of them like arguing about like Superman action, because like he's saving the people of Boravia, I think, which is like a fictional country in DC. And I think it's just like, yeah, it's a really interesting conversation to be had in the movie. Even though I think that the way they handled them is like is good, but I think it could have been way better, which I'm gonna get when I get to the negative part of the movie. The other positive part is actually the VFX, the CGI. I think most of them at least are fantastic. There's a couple of shots where Superman are like flying, like obviously around the globe, that I think some of the CGI was a bit wonky there, but for the most part, I think the CGI are good, are believable. And I think it's just like, yeah, it's a great work by the VFX team, especially when they fight the kaiju. I think sure, maybe like the kaiju is a bit more comical, but I feel like the VFX are believable enough, and the flying sequence with Superman for the most part are also really good. And I think James Gunn did say that he borrowed some elements, or I guess some ideas, with Top Gun Maverick, where you see drones to when you fly as Superman, and I think you kind of felt that in when he flies around. But for the most part, it's like, yeah, it's really good, and of course the action sequence are amazing. I think again, I feel like the action sequence are fun to watch, but I wanted more from it. I think if you ask me, I think Man of Steel, Henry Cavill Superman, or Zack Snyder Superman, still has like the best action sequence for Superman. Like the fight scene in that movie, regardless what you think about the movie, I think the fight scene in Man of Steel are fantastic. I love that a lot, and I think that was like way more brutal and way more, I guess, memorable and way more intense compared to the action sequence in this movie. Even though I still think the action are pretty fun, because I really enjoy watching them on the big screen. I think it was really cool. But I do think that it could use a bit more like intensity with the action sequence, because I feel like the way Zack Snyder did the Superman fight scene is still like the best one, but this one is not bad. I was just again, I'm expecting a bit more from Superman himself, but overall I do still enjoy the action sequence. And I also think that the music by John Murphy and David Fleming are really good. And obviously the most memorable score about the movie is like, I think there's like a Lex Luthor theme, I think, which I really love that. And of course the Superman March theme by John Williams, where John Murphy and David Fleming is like remixing the theme throughout the movie. I love that a lot. And there is even a scene where they played the theme, from like the first trailer, like the teaser trailer theme, and then they played it in the movie, and I was nearly, tear up, when I see that in the movie alongside with the scene building up Superman. I love that a lot. And yeah, obviously, the main villain, Lex Luthor himself, I think, yeah, he's a good villain. I think Nicholas Hoult does a great job portraying Lex Luthor to be this envy characters that was just super jealous of Superman. And yeah, there is some point in the movie where I really hated him, because I mean that's how you're supposed to feel when you are seeing a villain, because you're supposed to hate the villain. And I do feel like that with Lex Luthor, like with Nicholas Hoult performance. And I do think that the lackeys that Lex Luthor got, which is Ultraman, and I think the other one is called the Engineer. I think they have a pretty cool fight scene with Superman. Again, I was wishing a bit more from them, but for what we got, I think it was pretty fun. I love that. And I also love Crypto. I think Crypto could be a mixed bag to a lot of people, but I do think that he's a fun character to have. And there is some scene where I think we don't need Crypto to be in the scene, because like it was supposed to be comedic when he was on the scene. I think there is like two scenes where I was like, okay, like it could have been a serious moment without Crypto. But I think for the most part, I do like the inclusion of Crypto. I think it kind of makes Superman a bit more relatable. Having a dog, just like people have this like misperception. I guess have this perception of like a dog in the movie where it was like super well trained. It was like able to do like commands here and there without doing any mistakes. And sure, because that dog was trained, but I think Crypto was actually the kind of dog that was like not so good boy, and then he made mistakes a couple of times in the movie. And you kind of see it in a trailer where he basically smashed Superman when he got smashed into the Antarctica. So like, yeah, that's the type of dog that you got in this movie, and I do think it does a good job. I think it's still funny in a way. Besides all the positive aspect, I think for the Justice Gang, I forgot to mention them. I think Justice Gang in this movie are a pretty good inclusion, because I think they are showing the two different perspectives of the Superman and how the Justice Gang work, because like in the kaiju battle, Superman at one point actually tried to like not trying to kill the kaiju, or at least like try to kill him in the most human way possible. And then the Justice Gang was like, come on, Superman, let's just kill this giant thing, so like, and you kind of show this a little bit more in the after you went into the story a little bit more, and you see like the difference between the two groups. And I love that James Gunn were actually not making us picking side between Superman and the Justice Gang, but rather the movie is just there to show the different perspective, because like Superman is like about saving life and just like trying not to kill anybody, even the bad guys, because he is like, justice in an American way. And then you have the Justice Gang where it's like, well, if you're a bad guy, then chances are they're gonna kill it. They're gonna put you down for good. But I do think that the movie doesn't necessarily make us pick between the two sides, but just like showing how different superheroes performing, in their action, which I absolutely love that. Do I think the Justice Gang could be cut entirely from the movie? Yeah, I think could have been a much more focused movie in a way, but I do think that their inclusion was, I think it was good enough. It's not just like a glorified cameo, but I do think that, I think specifically Mr. Terrific, which I think the most important member, he does have a role in the movie that is quite significant, and I do enjoy it. That's all the positive aspect. Let's get to the negative one, shall we? This movie has so many subplots, and I think it would have been benefit much more if James Gunn just decided to cut several subplots. Like again, it doesn't bother me as much in the movie. I was a bit more mixed on this, but I feel like the movie could be a much more focusing by giving Superman more screen time, because I think again Superman is still the main focus and still have a lot of screen time because obviously he's the main character. But I do think, like I said before, I think Justice Gang could be cut entirely from the movie, and I think it would have been much more focused on that. Even though I still enjoy the inclusion of the Justice Gang, showing how the hero works differently, but I do think that some of the subplots in this movie, I was like, there is like one point in the movie I was like, oh god, there's like two plot points happening right now. Okay, and I do think that even though there is so many subplots here, there is like some aspect where it was a bit more connected in a way, but I do think that this many subplots, then people is gonna be, I think people will be complaining about that aspect in the movie, and I completely understand that. Like, again, it doesn't ruin the movie for me, but I think it doesn't hurt if you just like make a focused movie without too many subplots. That's my point. I think about like the tone about the movie. I think the tone for the most part does work, but there is like I said before with Crypto, there is like two scenes where I think he kind of ruins some of the emotional moments in the movie. One of them is about Lex Luthor, where Lex Luthor was like super angry at Superman and he started monologuing why he hates Superman. And I was so into the monologue, and I was so into Nicholashoult performance, because again, he's playing a really good Lex Luthor. And then Crypto just kind of like ruined the scenes for a bit there, and I'm just like, man, come on. Like, I don't think we need to see that scene happen. I think you can just let the emotional and basically angry scene with Lex Luthor just like play out normally without any jokes, because I do enjoy his performance and I do enjoy the moment at the time. And then when Crypto came in and make a jokes, I was like, oh, I was like caught by surprise, like, oh, this is what they were doing. Okay, sure, I guess. So that's why I think a little bit of the comedy here doesn't necessarily work, because I think James Gunn should just let the moment breathe instead of just like making a bunch of comedies here and there. I think the comedy still work fine, because I don't really get the MCU vibe in this movie, even though there is some scenes where they kind of like do the MCU vibes of the comedy here, where it's supposed to be serious and then they kind of like let the comedy kind of ruins the moment. So that's why I was like, it could have been toned down a little bit more, but for the most part I think the comedy did land. It doesn't bother me as much until the Lex Luthor scene, but I was like, man, come on. You could just let the moment breathe from here. Yeah, I think I would say the other part that I was a bit more negative or mixed here. I was like, well, I think the start of the movie, you have a lot of like information, and I do think this could be a bit conflicting for some people, where I think I get it why James Gunn decided to start the DCU this way, because obviously now the audience already know that it's gonna lead to a cinematic universe, so he might as well establish the universe as early as possible. But I do think that this movie felt like the third movie in the Superman trilogy, because you already establishing Superman, you're already establishing the DC universe, and that could be a bit much for some people. And I even for me, I was like, damn, like there is so many stuff here, and I feel like it's just like, yeah, I don't know, I was a big mix on this, where I feel like it doesn't hurt if you just do like a smaller scale movie with Superman, even though I think the way he did the storyline was okay. I think it's a good job, but I do think it would be much better if you just like make the plot much more focused and doesn't necessarily building this like huge universe yet, because you get the chance to do that if you have a one good movie, in my opinion, just like how MCU did with Iron Man. Iron Man just like a standalone movie where with the tease of the Avengers in the post-credit scene. But I think with Superman here, I get it why it was different, because now we're in a different era of the superhero genre. I get that, but I do think it could be a bit much to some people, and I think for me it's also like a bit much at times, where it's like, wow, like so many big things happening here. This is like a living universe, and I feel like I probably should see like, it's like there is like a two movies that I haven't watched, and I just like go straight to the final movie, in a trilogy. That's how it feels when you watch this movie, even though this is the first DCU movie. And one more thing about the negative aspect of the movie, because this movie has a conflict with the Borovia government, and I think the movie does like a good job by, I guess, like telling us with the text in the beginning, but I kind of wish that we see the conflict firsthand and seeing Superman action in the movie, because Clark Kent eventually, when he was interviewed by Lois Lane, he does give like an exposition for what happened in Borovia, but I kind of wish we saw that scene in the opening, like actually seeing it happen, because I think it will be much more powerful for the rest of the conflict in this movie. Either way, that's my review for Superman. Again, I still enjoyed the movie, and I know that a lot of people probably did. Again, if you are someone who already have a mindset that hating on the movie, because some people already convinced themselves they hate the movie even though they haven't watched it, then yeah, I don't think the movie will convince you to love it, to be honest. But I feel like if you're someone who are open-minded, then there is a chance that you might enjoy the movie and you might find pure joy watching the movie, because that's how I felt watching the movie. After I finished watching it, I was like, yeah, I was smiling, I was happy. I think this movie is very, very joyful, even though that, yes, I was expecting a bit more from Superman, because like he get his ass beaten a lot in this movie, and that also can become a problem to some people. Even for me, well, I was like, okay, well, I know Superman is a badass, but like, can we see him being a badass, instead of just like getting beaten multiple times, that kind of bothers me, especially in the third act. But I do like how they handle the final fight scene. Was like, oh, okay, he is Superman, so cool, cool scene, cool fight scene. You see it in the trailer where he spin around with the laser. So like, yeah, the final fight scene is absolutely amazing. But overall, I do enjoy the movie. I still think this is a solid start to the DC universe, and I wanted to see more from this current DC. And I know this is not for everybody, but if you are someone who are open-minded, but I'm hoping you are, then there is a chance that you might like the movie. So yeah, that's my review, guys. So let me know your opinions in the comment section below. Like, what do you guys think about Superman? Do you guys think this is a good start to the DCU, or do you guys actually someone who did not like the movie? Then share your opinions in the comment section below. I would love to hear about them. And please be nice, okay? Don't just be don't start having this like haters mentality, because I seen that a lot in the comment section of Superman, where people just like unnaturally hating on the movie for no reason. And I was like, come on, man. So yeah, please be reasonable if you are someone who did not like the movie, because I think we could share some interesting perspective why the movie doesn't work for you. Because again, I think that this movie could be, I think you could tear apart this movie if you want to. That's how I felt. But at the same time, be nice, be respectful, please. Either way, guys, that's my review. And if you enjoyed it, make sure, guys, fly, punch, and laser that subscribe and like button, and share the videos, do so stuff, and stay tuned for more movie reviews in the future. And again, I hope you guys enjoyed this review, and I will see you guys in the next one then. Bye.